Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever and whenever you so happen to be watching this program right here. It's the Americans for Prosperity Tennessee Weekly Update. I got to come up with a new name for that. We will eventually, I promise. But if you stumbled upon this program for the very first time, welcome back to another Thursday evening live. It is 6:10 Central. That means it's 7:10 Eastern. And what we do here is somewhat in the name of the program itself. It's a weekly update as to what's going on at the federal level with legislation, what's going on at the state level, but it's much more than that as well. We're going to sort of live life with each other, do life with each other, do this legislation with each other. We're going to get to know each other in the comment section. If you so happen to be watching on Facebook or Twitch or YouTube, we have a cool little thing, or rather David Thompson over here has a cool little thing called a unified chat, and we can see all those comments come together. We will respond to those. I really want those comments to drive the content creation of this program. I want to create a little digital family here. I want you all to be informed about what's going on at the state and federal level. Let us know how you feel, how impassioned you are by it, and then we'll give you ways in the back end to actually take action immediately, to enact change, to make change, to have your voice heard. Before we get into a state issue, and one that I confirmed with Tori earlier today, in her mind has never happened in the past before. In my mind has certainly not happened since I've been up there. Quick little tease right there. Let's introduce the rest of the team, starting with Tori Venable, State Director. How you doing? How was this week for you?
I'm doing great. It was really well. It was going really well other than Tuesday night. That was probably the one downside of my entire week. But the rest of the week's been great thus far, and I can't wait to tell you guys about what happened.
Let's go to James Amundsen, our Deputy Director. James, buddy, how you been doing? How's the kid and everything? You catching up to a brand new one? How's that going, man?
That's actually going pretty well. This week I got a little bit of a reprieve. The baby and my beautiful wife are visiting with family out of state, so I'm going to catch up with them this weekend. But that means I had a few days of rest, which was kind of nice. Despite the fact that we had a very difficult Tuesday up at the legislature. Of course, we're going to get all to that. But yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
And lastly here, let's go to our guy, David Thompson, out in the Knoxville area, as we're going to David Thompson as well. John says hi in Facebook. God is good. John, that is correct. God is good. How you doing, John? Nice to have you here. David Thompson, East Tennessee, Knoxville area. How you been doing, buddy? Stuff all right in your end?
Things are doing well, and I made sure my mic is turned on this week when I talk to you guys. See, the problem is I have two ways I can mute myself, and I always talk to these folks behind the scenes while I'm producing, and I never forget to turn the live part of the mic on. But hopefully you can hear me, and glad everyone's here, and looking forward to tonight.
As always, everyone, we're going to dive right into pertinent issues. But if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, doesn't matter. Wherever the description section of the video is, I think Twitch and YouTube, it's down here. Facebook, it's over there somewhere. If you open that description section up, you'll see a little blue link, blue lettering, goes to an Evernote link. That is the show notes that we put together, and we follow along step by step with the show notes. It will have links to articles. They have links for you to ways for you to take action. You can follow along with this. Check it out afterwards as well. Let's dive right in to this first topic at hand. House Bill 1315-1315. It's a truth and taxation bill. Let me give you a quick rundown as to what it was meant to do, what it will do, hopefully. And then Tori's going to bring us up to speed with what happened on Tuesday. So this truth and taxation bill, House Bill 1315, again, if you want to take action, click the Evernote link. You can send a letter directly to these legislators to let them know how you feel.
Or you can go to www.truthintaxationtn.com, and that will take you also to deliver a letter to legislators.
Truthintaxationtn.com. It's modeled off of Utah's truth and taxation policy push that passed in 1985. And simply put, when a city or county has a reckless spending or debt problem, like Nashville, obviously, they will be required to mail a detailed notice to all citizens in advance of any proposed property tax increase. People will know exactly how much their individual taxes might go up by, what their current tax rate is now, when that vote will be held, and they will have an opportunity to be heard before these officials cast their vote. Now, obviously, what this lays out here is that the officials, elected government officials, can either choose to listen to their constituents' concerns during these public hearings, or they can ignore those concerns while still holding elected office. Either way, this legislation will give taxpayers a fighting chance when local governments decide to levy these massive tax hikes. It's a pretty simple proposal, but Tori, before we dive into what happened this past week, I think it's absolutely necessary to set up what happens in the House and subcommittees. What is a voice vote? How is that different than how they do it in the Senate side? Can you just walk us, because we're about to watch a video and it may not make sense unless you get that part first.
Sure. So on the Senate side, everything is a roll call vote. And on the House side, and typically in subcommittees, they just go through with a voice vote. And most subcommittees are smaller in size, say 10 or less people are on the subcommittee or in the subcommittee, and they generally know how people feel about the different bills. And so, we had an instance this past Tuesday where we knew we had 5 confirmed yes votes. That was more than we needed, considering there were 8 members on that committee present at that committee. And we knew that the 5 vote margin would carry the vote. So as they're doing most legislation, this is common practice. This is not something that's just this one committee. A lot of committees do voice votes, and it just helps speed up the process. Typically, however, if there's if a chairman, the one who is running the committee, if they are not really sure which way the vote went, a lot of times they will call for a roll call vote. But the only way a roll call vote happens in a House subcommittee is if a legislator asks for a roll call vote before they do anything else. That's the only way there's a roll call vote tally of subcommittee votes. And that's often because they really work through complex policy issues in the subcommittees, and oftentimes will amend bills in the subcommittees. And the amended version of a bill versus the final version of a bill can look very different. So that's something to give them just a little bit more leeway so that people will not twist what happened in a committee.
So you just heard Tori explain everything that was going on in this subcommittee. And I'm going to play this portion here, the entirety of the clip, as we fast forward and pause and go back through. Will take about 2 to 3 minutes. But I think it's important to play the entirety of all of this just so everybody can get a full understanding as to what the room felt like. All right. So let's start here and we'll just follow right along. Okay. And the quick setup here. This is Chairman Carr. He's about to kick it over to Representative Reedy. And Reedy last week put an amendment on the bill. And the amendment itself essentially is the entirety of what this bill will do. So they're picking up from where they left off last week. That's a bit of the context. Listen here for yourself.
Being nothing from the committee, we'll go to item number 1, HB 1315 by Chairman Reedy. Chairman Reedy, you're recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will talk right on the bill because we have already put the amendment on, correct?
That is correct. We did last week.
And of course, first I want to start off to re-inform you about the certified tax rate. It comes from the Comptroller's office. You can certainly go on the Comptroller's website to see where your city, counties might be at. There's several that this bill is specific to. It will not affect the other counties in the state unless they go over the certified tax rate.
Now, obviously, what he's talking about in Tennessee, we have a certified tax rate that's simply meant to make it so that you don't pay more in property taxes if your property value goes up. That's what he's referencing here. And he's obviously...
And one more piece on this. As he says it in committee, he's talking about this, if they go over the certified tax rate. This only takes effect if they have a spending and debt problem. So, for instance, all the properties valued in Nashville is roughly $91 billion. So for this to be triggered for Nashville, because they do have a debt ratio of 10% or greater, that means for $91 billion worth of assets, they have $9.1 billion in debt. That is more than the entire state of Tennessee. That is how you get to that 10% debt ratio that will trigger these advanced public notice requirements. Okay.
And that's a little bit what Reedy was explaining, is that it's only pertaining to those areas that have that 10% debt ratio. Let's continue where we left off here.
And a good representation of a certified tax rate. Of course, Houston County, my home county, it pertains to this bill, but looking at the certified tax rate for Nashville, Davidson County is at 2.755, and just proposed with a tax increase, which would make it 3.788. And the purpose of this bill, prior to exceeding the certified tax rate, a local government, and I'm reading right off of the fiscal memorandum for those that are interested where I'm getting the information. The governing body is required to publish notice in a newspaper of general circulation in the county. The proposed language would require local governments whose ratio is 10% or greater who intend to exceed the certified tax rate to publish an additional newspaper notification and provide a mailed notice to each property owner within the taxing jurisdiction of the local government. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll just open myself for questions.
Now here, the reason why I played the majority of that clip is just to obviously give a setup as to what the rest of the committee is informed of, how aware they are of the bill, the understanding of where we came from last week, and then this happens. And again, this is just a little bit weird, but I think it adds a little bit to the tension of the room. Listen here.
If there's any.
Excuse me, I'm a little bit off today, but anyway, without objection, we are going to take a 5-minute recess. The attorney's not here. We're at recess. I forgot my attorney's not here. I can't conduct.
Now, obviously, this was nobody's fault. Quite clearly, the attorney's not there. The attorney's not there. You can't conduct. But it sets up where we come back in as the attorney comes back. It didn't take 5 minutes. It took all of about a minute and a half, which ends up picking up right about here. And we come back into this, just this. Listen here.
We are back in session since all parties are here. Representative Reedy, you're still recognized on your bill.
I renew my motion, sir.
All right. Representative renews his motion on this bill.
Now listen.
Any questions to the sponsor? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All those in favor of House Bill 1315 say aye. All those opposed, no. No. Bill fails. Thank you. Sorry about that.
All right. Now, Tori, explain to us one more time, now that we have the full context of what the video looks like, and y'all didn't see this because I didn't play it far enough. Tori's actually right behind on the other side of that little bar area. She's sitting
with
there watching
steam
these
coming
people.
out of her ears, you know.
Right?
Flames coming out of my ears after this happened. So I'm sitting right there, and mind you, I had talked to all of the members before we went into that committee, and I knew for a fact that we had 5 votes because one of our votes was actually the sponsor of the bill. So I had confirmed these in advance. There was one member, Dave Wright. He would not confirm where he was at. He is the only one that I could not really make out because I'm sitting there, again, like second row from where they're sitting. He's the only one I couldn't make out what he said, but I do believe he was a no vote in the committee that day. Chairman Carr was a no vote. And the Democrat from Clarksville,
Jason Hodges, yeah,
was a very loud no. So I think that could have possibly been part of it because also other than Chairman Carr and Reedy, they are the only 2 that have their mics on. So unless you're sitting in the room, you're not going to hear it like I heard it. And they also, the members have plexiglass in between them. So the position and layout of where they were sitting, it's possible that the chairman could have heard more no's because he has a very loud Democrat sitting to his front left, right? And then he's got Dave Wright sitting to his left on the same row as him. So it's possible that that's what he heard. A lot of the members that, they were stunned that this happened, and they actually went and recorded their vote as the opposite, is that they were voting yes. So, I've spoken with the chairman, and we're because of some different parliamentary procedures, Representative Reedy was able to put the bill back on notice. But what we need now is, and it can only happen one time if a bill fails in committee like that. So what we need now is we need one of those no votes to change their mind, to reconsider their actions and vote in favor of reconsidering their actions. So that means that we need 6 votes now to get them to even reconsider their actions. And I'm really hopeful that, they'll do the right thing, and knowing that we did have the votes to come out of committee, that he'll change his mind and, make the decision to one of the no votes would make their decision to, reconsider their actions, even if they're still going to vote no on the bill. So that's where we're at right now. We're still really hopeful. We've got that hearing coming up on Tuesday. And I know we're inviting, especially those folks that were engaged with us with the Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act, as we were gathering those 27,000 signatures to roll back that 34% property tax hike. And, why they should care about this is if this would have been in place in Nashville, because Nashville is one of the few reckless spending that has that debt ratio of 10% or greater. There's actually only 5 areas in the state currently. The comptroller gets this information annually. And so it's Nashville, Memphis, Houston County, where our sponsor is from, Lake County, and the city of Alcoa. That's it. Those are the only 5 local governments in the state that have exceeded that 10% debt ratio. Really significant of them having a spending problem. Back to the Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act. So if you're one of those people that helped us get all those signatures or sign that and really felt like your voice was not heard by the Metro Nashville government, especially when they made sure that you couldn't get a vote on it at the ballot box, this is your chance. This is your chance to really do something about it and hopefully prevent something like this from happening again in a Nashville or a Memphis.
And Tori, Tanya just asked in Facebook, what was this bill and what was it for? If you have just so happened join us either on Twitch or YouTube or Facebook, or if you're watching this back later on and you zoned out for a minute, this is House Bill 1315, House Bill 1315, and it's modeling Utah's truth in taxation bill. And it's exactly what Tori just mentioned. Especially if you're one of these people in Davidson County that felt as if you didn't have your voice heard, you didn't have your opportunity to make it known in front of government, in front of your representatives, in our representative republic, how you feel about your property taxes going up by 34%, 37% in some areas in Davidson County. This bill will allow you to have that opportunity. In those areas that have a debt ratio of 10% or higher, a mailed notice will be sent to your house indicating what the property tax is currently, how much it will go up by, when a public hearing will be held, and giving you an opportunity to be heard. Legislators then have to vote directly there after you're heard whether to raise or not raise your property taxes. And if you want to make it known next Tuesday, 4:30 p.m., reach out to me personally, send us an invite, ghenry, GHENRY at afphq.org, or call me directly. I don't care. 615-330-4569. We will set this up. Join us at 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday. Let it be known how you feel about this, because this needs to come back up one more time. Before we switch,
definitely reach out to your lawmakers. We've got even a website set up for this. So it's truthintaxationtn.com. You can send your legislator, your individual legislator, an email telling them how important this is, or go one step further and give them a call. Ask them to sign on to the bill and support the bill. This is a very important piece of legislation. Grant, one more thing. You're saying we're modeling it off of Utah's law. So Tennessee actually, in the fact that we have a certified tax rate,
right,
we do have a version of truth in taxation. Tennessee and Utah are the only states that have a version of truth in taxation. However, Utah's goes further than ours. So we're really expanding our own truth in taxation law with the additional public notice requirement if it's a reckless spending city that's going to raise their property taxes. And, one more point to note, because I always think it's important to include like the counter side, right?
Yeah.
Well, what about if they do this, these local governments, they're raising taxes anyways, then they're going to have to pay for these postcard mailers to go out to all the property owners. So the local governments, that's almost like a cost of doing business. They would have to eat that cost. But for the city of Nashville, for instance, the rough estimate of the number of property owners and the number of mail pieces, it sounds like a lot of money. $250,000 was the estimate if Nashville would have sent those postcard mailers out. Just so you know, if you sign that Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act petition, the city of Nashville spent $250,000 just on their legal fees to keep you from having your voice heard at the ballot. They spent that on hiring up every lawyer in the city of Nashville. So it's in the grand scheme of things. And most of these other areas that do have that high debt ratio, the fiscal note on it is an expected, perhaps it could be $1,800 a year. Is what they think a typical would be, because that's an average of all of these different debt ratio cities together, and just judging on the likelihood that they would actually have to do those postcard sends any given year.
And if you are watching on Facebook, truthandtaxation.com is now pinned in the comments section. David Thompson threw that up there so you can go express your opinion. That letter, again, when you sign, it's a letter to a legislator. It's not a mere online petition. It literally goes directly to these legislators sitting on that subcommittee now. As soon as you hit send and put your information in, it goes directly to their inbox. By the way, Amy said in Facebook, here. That's what I'm talking about. And John said in Facebook a second ago, don't be afraid to share the truth. Man, it resonated with me so hard right there. Before we switch to a few other state issues that either passed or did not pass this week, James, anything you want to add on to that? Or David, anything you want to say in the passing about the truth and taxation portion before we get on to some other stuff?
Yeah, the only thing I want to add is that this is already a cost that the cities are going to know. They have to send out a mailer every year whenever your taxes are due. So this isn't a difficult task for them. They're familiar with this process. This is just some additional information, only in the case that they would exceed their certified tax rate.
James, let's stay on you then as we're transitioning to some healthcare bills that did not pass. And I say with a little bit of a crinkle in my forehead here, simply because I was a little bit stunned / surprised at both of these versions that didn't pass. I'm talking about House Bill 2, Senate Bill 1, which was the surprise medical billing, and then maybe play a little bit of catch up for us, James, and tell us how that played into the all payers claims database. Both of these bills, both of which ended up being sent to a summer study, if I'm not wrong, but explain what happened there and what's going on behind the scenes here.
Well, just to give you a little bit more background, at the end of last year, when they were doing the coronavirus relief package, the big omnibus bill, there was federal legislation around no surprise billing. And it is, a pretty vague federal law that was passed. It doesn't really give a lot of information about how that exactly will be conducted. They're still going to be developing rules. So we really don't know what that process is going to look like. But in the meantime, we have had several state legislators over the years attempt to pass some form of no surprise billing. In fact, I've got a document in my hand where leadership about 2 years ago in the state of Tennessee had included surprise billing as one of the healthcare innovations that they wanted to attempt in the state of Tennessee. So back to the federal legislation that was just passed, included in that legislation was a grant process that could be awarded to the states to set up an all-payer claims database for the roughly half of the states that do not currently have one. There are already 23 states that have some type of claim database. What that database allows folks to do and why it's so important that it's connected to the surprise billing is that with a claims database, we would have a much better idea of what the cost and the availability of services are in any region, any city, any county, any state. So it is a useful tool for every state to have. So it was a good thing that this legislation did include that provision. So to expand on that, that claims database would play in hand with no surprise billing, because one of the aspects of surprise billing is they have to negotiate what is an average rate or a mean rate for paying a provider when there's a dispute. So those two things work hand in hand. And just to be blunt, that database would have a lot of benefits for consumers. Not that they would necessarily have access to that information publicly, but it would also help in the future whenever that information is a little bit more readily available, so that folks can make better healthcare decisions and especially when it comes to factoring cost into those decisions.
And James, somewhat of an uninformed follow-up question here, but we're talking about this all payers claims database. I'm trying to fill myself into. I suppose that the idea is if we have a big list of what all these costs involved with medical care, medical procedures would be, we can then use that list to inform the other side of the surprise medical billing thing, right? It will help the arbitration process. It will help the comparison process. It will help inform over here doing away with some of that surprise medical billing. Am I getting that right? Is that wrong? How does that work?
So that's
You're right on the money.
Let me jump in here, James. That's a big piece of it. But the whole point of having like an all payers claims database is something like price transparency or price tags. You know, if you go to the grocery store and you purchase a gallon of milk, you know exactly how much that gallon of milk is. However, if you have to have a rotator cuff surgery, you're going to have a very hard time finding out exactly how much that surgery is going to cost you, even if you call around and get estimates and get the best price. So, you know, putting consumers more in control of their own healthcare, helping them to make those decisions for themselves instead of letting the government do it for them, that is a big step in the transparency, so people can make the decisions for themselves instead of a government-run healthcare system. Okay, now pick it up, James.
Go ahead, James.
And one more thing that I could add to that, you know, that database actually would also track outcomes. So you would have a better, you know, understanding if you go to a particular provider, whether or not you'll actually, you know, get the remedy that you're looking for. So there's a lot of value to that database.
And so we said, obviously, this was sent to summer study. And, you know, typically when someone hears summer study, if people watching are not aware of this, Tori, James, correct me if I'm wrong. Typically, when you hear the word summer study, it means, well, that's sort of the graveyard of bills. Yeah,
it's
that's where.
a polite way to kill a bill, usually.
Yeah.
Now, there are times in non-election years, which this is not an election year. There are times when there are actual summer studies. The governor did this with his criminal justice reform task force. This happened also with the certificate of need licensing task force.
I was going to say that.
So there's been a number of actual meetings that do take place through summer study. But typically when something gets sent to summer study, unless you've got a sponsor really pushing it and really bringing the coalitions and all the different people together that have an interest in it, it doesn't happen unless you've got somebody really driving that train.
Now, obviously, we could go into today. I mean, we could explain all day long as to the reasons why it didn't pass. There was a matching federal bill that kind of did the same thing. Some people had some weird concerns with the information itself, possibly going into other databases. I mean, we could spend all day here, but the simple idea is that it's going to summer study. James, stick with healthcare for a minute, and maybe in about 2 minutes, if you could, because I want to make sure we get to some federal stuff as well. House Bill 948 and House Bill 980, both of which intend to slightly alter, if not fully alter, fingers crossed, our certificate of need laws in Tennessee. Can you tell a little bit about what those two bills were trying to do? And they both passed out of their respective committees in the House and Senate side this week, going on to the next step. Bring us up to date real quick.
Well, House Bill 948 is a comprehensive CON reform. This is a bill that has actually been traveling through the legislature since last year. Not exactly in this form. It has been modified slightly, but this is the culmination of about 2 years of effort, starting in 2019 when there was a task force developed during the summer. Several months, you know, all the stakeholders came together, literally sat at a table together every month and worked out the details of this bill. It does many things. It doesn't do all the things we would love for it to do, but it certainly takes us a step in the right direction. And just to kind of summarize what it does is, first and foremost, it makes the certificate of need process you know, easier and cheaper and much quicker for the applicants. That is a huge aspect of this bill, and is probably the centerpiece of this bill, to be honest with you. Because right now, you know, an applicant, you know, it's very expensive and very time-consuming for them to go through this process. So anything that they can do to shorten that, and I mean, this is significantly reduces the amount of time that it would require them to go through this process. You know, anything that they could do was going to be very, very helpful. So that aspect of this bill alone is a huge step. But you know, furthermore, it removes or eliminates the protectionist aspects of CON. You know, in the current situation that we have in Tennessee, any existing provider, any incumbent facility can object to a new applicant, and they have the presumption of a veto over a new provider coming into the area. And that's, even though that's not in code anywhere, that is kind of how it's received whenever there's an objection to a certificate of need.
So in layman's
Okay.
terms, that would be like Burger King being able to object to a McDonald's going in a few miles down the road, and then the McDonald's not being able to open because the Burger King objected.
Yeah.
And nobody likes those fake burgers anyway, you know?
That's right. Yeah.
And, and that, a good point about this bill is that it also, changes the radius. Previously, it was kind of up in the air as to which hospitals could object to a new applicant. When there was a hospital coming into southern Williamson County, northern Murray County, we had hospitals from as far away as Nashville and down as far as into Lewisburg. So, I mean, there were a lot of providers that came in to object to that. This new bill would restrict that radius to about 35 miles. So that's another important aspect.
And the certificate of need. So just like, again, for layman's terms, certificate of need, and tell me if I'm wrong here, James, it's basically the hospital or healthcare facility is certifying that there is a need in that area, enough of a need in that area for them to open a business that would not affect other people's businesses, right?
Yeah, that is one of the criteria that they use when they're determining the certificate of need. First and foremost, they want to make sure that the new provider is capable of providing the services that they're trying to get the certificate for. So that's what they consider first. Then they look at the quality of care aspect of it, and then they do take in consideration the impact to existing providers. That's the three areas that they look at whenever they're considering that.
So cons moving, which is good. It's a good thing. If you like healthcare freedom and you like more healthcare access and lower costs, this is a good thing for Tennesseans. So since that is moving, do you know, James, will it be heard next week?
Yes, it's going to be heard in the full health committee for the House side, and it's going to be moving to the finance committee or Senate Finance.
Awesome.
Yeah, and by the way,
just eyeball for that somewhere too, don't we?
Yeah, we'll throw it in the show notes. And speaking of the show notes as well, when we say these words show notes, let me just show y'all what I mean. If you're watching on Facebook, it's going to look a little bit weird, but we're going Inception style here. It's a Facebook inside of a Facebook, okay? See my mouse hovering over here on the right side of the screen? Click that see more button. This link right here, the Evernote link. If you open this up, this is what we're talking about, okay? Anything you want more information on in this program, we do this every single week on Thursday evenings. Anything you want more of, it's all in here. Here's a link to take action on the infrastructure bill that we're about to talk about here in just a second. Here's a national personal option plan. The PRO Act is here. Here's truthandtaxationtn.com, civil asset forfeiture stuff. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom here, you'll actually see all of these updates on the bills that we're following, where they're standing. You can click on here, go into where there will be next week, a little bit of my notes as to what happened the previous week, everything like that. So that's what we mean when we talk about show notes. If you want any more follow-up on any of those things, dive into the Evernote link, spend a bunch of time there. Tori, before we switch to that national topic, one final thing I want to touch on with the state. Intra-district open enrollment kind of just sailed through both sides there. Yeah? Bring us up to speed what happened there.
I would say it only sailed because we literally have talked to everyone over the past 2 years about it. It's essentially it's public school choice within the same school district. There's a patchwork of policies already in place. And so what this does is it streamlines it. It provides more transparency for parents, a 14-day window where parents can see where all the open seats are, and then a 30-day window where they get to apply. And if they have more people that apply for these open seats and they have open seats, then they have a lottery to determine who gets the open seats. And if you're a parent or a child in this process, once you have enrolled in that other school, that's where you're at. You don't have to continually go through this process every year and continually fight for your seat, as is the case in some places right now. So this is a huge step forward for transparency, for public school choice and innovation, and should really help families find the best education for their children. So we're looking forward to it. And I think we could see that one. So it passed the full education and the education committee on the Senate side also. So I think it goes to the Senate calendar and the House calendar, I believe. I don't think that there's a fiscal note. So I believe that we'll probably be we could be on the House and Senate floor next week. And if you like educational freedom, I would highly encourage you to show up in support of that bill or let your lawmakers know you support it. And it's House Bill 1305, Senate Bill 788.
Nick said in Facebook, by the way, competition breeds better service and lower prices. Con, certificate of need, is strictly protectionism. Here, here, exactly. And Tanya, I don't have time to bring that issue up, but I second what you're saying about the simple notion of freedom, individual autonomy. I am right there with you. Let's move on to the federal topic at hand, Biden's infrastructure bill. And we read this last week, okay? Let me just start with somebody named Michael R. Strain in Bloomberg. If you don't know what's going on, here's the ABC headline. Biden's infrastructure plan with no GOP support gets boost from Senate reconciliation ruling. And this is anywhere from a $2 trillion to $3 trillion to whoever knows how many $1 trillion spending package that is allegedly going under the guise of infrastructure. And I say it's going under the guise of infrastructure because it's being, you'll see here in a second. Here's Michael R. Strain. Let's do this together. Here's Michael R. Strain from Bloomberg. Any successful effort to improve the nation's bridges, roads, public transit, airports, tunnels, and water systems should go hand in hand with reducing regulatory barriers. Agreed. Carrying out a building project today requires compliance with a slew of environmental regulations, labor standards, and authorizations by various government entities. One more reason why, if you do this, you should probably do it as localized as possible. The regulations can slow the pace of work to a crawl and increase its costs. He goes on to say, and the balance of spending in this infrastructure proposal should be more heavily weighted towards infrastructure, as opposed to what? He tells you here in a second. Biden wants to spend $400 billion, that's with a B, let's highlight that B, $400 billion, nearly 20% of the total cost on the bill, on improved in-care home for the elderly and people with disabilities. Now, whether that's a decent way to spend money or not is not the point. What the point is this next statement. While only allocating $115 billion for roads and bridges. Again, $400 billion compared to $115 billion. Now, this proposal would also do some of the following: raise taxes on families and businesses by the trillions of dollars, mandate more government control over healthcare, implement elements of the Green New Deal. You see where this is going. It touches on an element of the PRO Act. Let's get to what
exactly where it's going, Grant. I hate to interject here, but they have talked about an infrastructure plan. When they started tossing around an infrastructure plan, what that means for you as a regular person, at a minimum, you can expect that they will raise the gas tax, the federal gas tax, by 25 cents. It's under 25 cents right now. So they are going to more than double the federal gas tax to try and pay for just a tiny sliver of this plan, because I can guarantee you raising the gas tax 25 cents will not pay for the plan. Because do you want to know how much a trillion is? 1 trillion seconds. Guess how much 1 trillion seconds is?
I don't know.
32,000 years. That's the amount of money we are blowing through. 1 trillion seconds is 32,000 plus years. Now, with the COVID spending packages and all these other, what are we at, 6 trillion? We've got a current national debt of 26 trillion. It's just hard for regular people to think through how big a trillion is. A trillion is an astronomical amount of money. I think it's a million millions? No, that's not even
it's 1,000 million.
No,
that's a billion. Not a trillion.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It is a million. You're right. You're right, Tori.
But still, it's an absurd, outrageous number.
Please jump back in. I've had plenty of stuff to say today.
Well, look, Tori, you bring up a great point, because this is where it's all going. Again, here's the editorial board from the Wall Street Journal, what they have to say. They go over some calculations saying his plan also includes $213 billion for affordable housing, $100 billion for retrofitting public schools, $25 billion for childcare facilities, $400 billion for increasing home health care. And again, my point of bringing this up, I suppose the same as the Wall Street Journal's, is not necessarily to make commentary on whether or not that's a decent way to spend money. It's the disingenuous nature, if not completely purposefully misleading nature, behind pitching this as an infrastructure package. They go on to say, note the political irony of all this. Mr. Biden says that his public investment has fallen as a share of the economy since 1960s, going on to say that he's now essentially using this to redefine social welfare as public works to drive more social welfare spending. And all of this stuff has spawned some of my favorite memes of the last couple of weeks. So look, let's be a little bit light-natured here, fun. Let's do a quick meme review so we can see where everything's at. This meme review came off of this tweet from Kirsten Gillibrand. All right. This is on 7:30 in the morning on April 7th. Paid leave is infrastructure. Childcare is infrastructure. Caregiving is infrastructure, which obviously spawned some of these things. Here's Ralph Wiggums from The Simpsons saying, I'm an infrastructure. I can't do her else voice.
That's a Lion King.
That's right. I'm an infrastructure, he says. Here's a gorilla claiming that, hey, look, and that, my friends, is why bananas are infrastructure too. Why not? If everything is infrastructure, I'm going to sell it to you that I need my bananas. I need my sustenance. Give me bananas. It is infrastructure. We go on, obviously, to see one of my other favorite ones here, Yoda, saying that I'm not going to try and do the Yoda voice, but he says infrastructure.
Oh, come on, Grant.
No, you can try the Yoda voice if you want, James. I'm not doing this Yoda voice. Infrastructure is an energy field created by all the living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. Infrastructure binds the galaxy together, and my absolute favorite one is the Lion King. Everything the light touches, Simba, all of it, everything the light touches here is infrastructure. And look, I think it's awesome. It's funny, but in all sincerity, what are we going to do? What's the actual response? We can have fun here and laugh at the memes all day long, and we can point out the absurdity on its face. And that's fine, but I don't think it's going to be a convincing argument as to what to do. Well, luckily, I think Americans for Prosperity President Tim Phillips gives us a little bit of something here. Lawmakers should be focused on improving roads and bridges instead of consider the following reforms: preserving federal infrastructure dollars for targeted construction projects of a national priority, and putting an end to the practice of spending gas tax revenue on non-highway projects, unleashing a private investment in infrastructure assets, returning power and responsibility to the states wherever possible. I can't tell you how helpful that would be. Overhauling the regulatory and permitting system to improve outcomes and efficiency, and eliminating costly and unfair labor restrictions. All right, one more time to end the show here. Back up to the top of the show notes. If you want to take action on something like this, here's all the links. notaroadsbill.com, send you directly to this. Fill out your information, hit take action, goes directly to your legislators. I'm telling you, this is going to be a massive one. Attempting to use the reconciliation process means they will not need those 60 votes in the Senate if they can get it done. This is vital that you all take action on, especially this one right now. As we're closing the program here, Tori, James, David, anything else we missed that you guys want to bring attention to?
So on the infrastructure bill in particular, it's important to reach out even if you have a Democrat member of Congress. Not just, we know the Republicans are opposed. So great. You can email them too, and that's helpful. But especially if you live in a city that has a Democrat representative or a Democrat senator, or you're in a state even that has a Democrat senator, not Tennessee, but you need to reach out to those reasonable middle of the road folks and tell them, no, it's too much spending. It's not targeted. Like, make the arguments. That's the only way we're going to stop this. It's the only way. And so you have to have your voice heard. And that is why, and the government should only govern at the consent of the governed. And your silence sounds a whole lot like consent if you're not engaged.
It does. And I just don't know how many more trillions we can continually spend before, what is my dollar worth anymore, right? I don't know if that has anything to do with why Bill Gates is buying up farmland, because that dollar doesn't mean anything anymore, but whatever, right? James, anything we're missing here on the last end of the show? Anything you want to add to, or David?
I think we've got another week to look forward to hopefully get a lot of good things accomplished at the state legislature. We're going to keep our eye on healthcare reforms. We're certainly going to keep our eye on truth in taxation, as well as the open enrollment. So we just look forward to being able to do good things.
TruthInTaxationTN.com, TruthInTaxationTN.com. Sign that letter. Join us Tuesday, 4:30 p.m. at the state legislature. If you want more information on that, message me directly, send me an email, give me a phone call, hit me up on Facebook, 615-330-4569, or ghenry@afphq.org. We love each and every one of y'all. Sincerely, we'll see y'all next week.